Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to Fuel Your Legacy. And as always, we're bringing the best, the brightest, the people from all over the world who have a story to tell, a legacy to share, and are on a mission to help you in your lives and benefit from their life lessons. So today, we're actually going to be speaking with Serena Sabala. She is currently over in the UK, but originated from Italy. Spent a little bit of time in the States here, in the land of Texas, which is always a good place to be if you like hot, humid weather. But the cool thing about her and what she's been able to accomplish is she's the co-founder of Whole Shift Wellness, a coaching company specialized in bespoke wellness programs for busy people who are pressed for time, high-level entrepreneurs, business owners, people who think, man, I just don't have time for that. I'm too busy, obsessed with my goals. I know that's you who's listening. You're obsessed with your goals. You're obsessed with chasing down that next big shiny thing that you just want to accomplish. And sometimes we forget to take care of ourselves. So she's really gone into the depths based on over 20 years of combined experience in industry. Serena and her husband, Eugene, have developed a proven methodology to transform you into your most fit, healthy, confident self. And if that's not what you need, then call me and we can have you on the podcast. Because as far as I know, everybody wants to be more confident, more healthy, more fit. And if you can do that within 1 year of your life, change your life in 1 year, now you have the rest of your life to start living. So thank you, Serena, for being on here. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Let us know a little bit more where you came from and why you decided to go and be an entrepreneur and start your own business and what that looks like today.
Thank you so much for the brilliant introduction, and thank you for having me. The seed of wellness was planted in my consciousness at a very young age. And it was sadly a result of trauma. When I was only 8 years old, my father, who was an incredibly successful entrepreneur and business owner, he actually invented a profession that didn't even exist before his time. That's how successful he was. He grew his business to several million euros in revenue in a very short period of time. However, I now know, didn't have the tools to be able to take care of himself whilst also juggling all the responsibilities of his really fast-paced life. He was a creative, so always kind of high demands from his creativity in his profession. He had a young family, loads of employees to take care of. And so his own health and well-being got constantly put on the back burner until sadly when I was 8, my dad got sick and as a result of his illness lost everything he had worked so hard to build over his entire life, including his business. And these events had a really profound effect on my life as a child. And they really planted the seed in my mind very young that there really genuinely isn't anything more valuable and more important than your own health and well-being. Your entire life rests upon it. Your own business, whether you're a business owner or if you work for somebody else, your career rests upon your level of health and well-being. And there aren't enough money in the world to pay for it once you've lost it. So I became really present with the concept and with the idea that prevention genuinely is the best, fastest, quickest, cheapest cure when it comes to health and well-being. Because my dad hasn't really ever recovered fully since. So these are kind of, in a nutshell, the events that planted this seed in my mind. And I wasn't really conscious at the time, but I became really interested in learning, discovering, exploring as many modalities as possible to take the best possible care of myself above all else, and to do so before I did anything else in life. And so I started delving into it. I am a passionate student of nutrition. I've studied and tried all formulas under the roof, and this has allowed me to really kind of cut through the stuff that definitely doesn't work to identify, the pillars of healthy and balanced nutrition. I'm also a certified yoga teacher and fitness trainer. And unsurprisingly, I married in the field, and my husband himself is a certified therapeutic masseuse, yoga teacher, and PT with over 20 years of experience running his own personal training business. However, with all that said, for many years in my life, I thought that health and wellness was a passion. And it was just a hobby. It was just something that I was genuinely really passionate about, and that I enjoyed exploring and delving into and learning about. But it wasn't until my late 20s that I started getting these kind of feelings, thoughts, and emotions that I could turn this lifelong passion into a profession and make a living out of it. When I started working when I was only 18 years old, and I actually progressed into the fashion industry to a very good level. I had a great career in the fashion industry. I moved to London and progressed even further. And I was at the point where I had my best job, and I was in a serious relationship. We owned a house, we were going to get married, and everything was pretty good on paper. And I was only 28 years old at the time. So it was I had accomplished quite a lot at quite a young age. And that's when I got this massive urge to become a yoga teacher and to start really sharing my passion for health and wellness with others. And interestingly, what happened at that junction, and that was the year 2012, and I will never forget, is that my life as I knew it started falling apart as a result of this decision that I made of becoming a certified yoga teacher. And so my relationship started falling apart as a result of it, and I had to quit my job in order to do my teacher training, and I had to sell my house to my ex-boyfriend and sell all my belongings because I was going to the States for some months to become a certified yoga teacher. And I was lucky enough to have a little bit of savings from my job and the sale of the property. And so I was like, you know what? I think the universe is pulling me in a different direction right now. And I'm not entirely sure where I'm headed, but I'm gonna follow this lead and see where it goes. And so I decided to just take a 1-year hiatus from my fashion career and go and become a yoga teacher and explore my passion for health and well-being. And frankly, I've never looked back. I never went back to fashion afterwards. Shortly thereafter, I met my husband, who is also passionate about health and well-being himself. And we decided to start our own company together to transform the well-being of busy professionals. I knew that was the niche for me because of my story with my dad. Essentially, what I am doing now is nothing other than empowering individuals to prevent them from ending up like my dad did, and put all my tools, all hands on decks, myself and my husband, to avoid those scenarios from taking place, because I know how profoundly impactful they are, not only on the individuals affected, but the entire communities around them. And the year 2019, this is where you find me now, having developed a fully fledged business all revolving around my passion.
I love it. It's just so interesting and fascinating to hear people's stories and the way that life works out and winds people into exactly where they're supposed to be. And sometimes it's the most unlikely path to there. I know somebody who went to school to be a fashion designer out in California, and about halfway through school, if it was even that much, she found the financial industry and ended up going from fashion into finance. It just doesn't seem like the natural progression of things, but with that progression, she's now wildly financially successful, has an office right on Wall Street in New York, and it's just really made a name for herself all over the news, just really become a professional. And I think that says a lot about sometimes we don't always know where we're supposed to be. I have a quick question here. When you say your dad lost everything from his business, so there's we're used to hearing from a lot of different business owners and different business people, and they all have a story to tell. What exactly happened that made your dad lose his business due to his health?
So my dad was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which is a mental health condition that, just for those who don't know about it, what happens when you become ill is that you swing from moments of terrible depression where you're not even able to get up from your bed to moments of peak of manic behavior and euphoria where you are completely out of control and out of bounds. And because of these massive swings in moods, my dad couldn't manage his business any longer. But one of the most invasive side effects of the manic phases is that for most people who suffer from them is that you spend all the money that you have and then some. So, and at the very beginning of my dad's illness, when he was just newly diagnosed, and we're talking about the early 90s back in Sicily, Italy, where I'm from, there wasn't a lot of common knowledge around this disease and what it was like and what it meant. So my dad kind of ran havoc through the business and family finances. Like, we ended up bankrupt, my family, not just the business, because he lost everything under his name and everything was under his name. So we lost all our homes, everything. We had to move in with my grandparents, and it was literally a direct result of this complete loss of control in behavior that caused him to literally spend all the money that he had and end up in massive debt.
Yeah, no, I think that is a key thing here. It's interesting. It's often overlooked, and I think it's something to be aware of. Many of some of the most creative, talented people on this planet suffered in one form or another from some form of mental disorders.
Yeah.
And in every area of life, and I believe this wholeheartedly, in every area of life, there's going to be we are who we are, and there is good things about our attributes, and there's things that maybe are not as good about our attributes. And it's the balance of life to determine how to maximize the good and protect against the bad. And so when you're setting up a business or anything, if you're aware that you have those tendencies, then before you go build a big business, but I want you to go build a big business, but before you do that, set some safety guards inside of the system, because that way, even if you are struggling with this, I think a great, I forget what it's called. I think it's not A Beautiful Mind.
The Beautiful Mind is revolving around mental illness. It is.
There's one with what's his name? Will Smith, that just came out 2 or 3 years ago, and he's the creator of this business who his family died, and so he's kind of off the rails. But because the other people in the company had enough control and knew how to safeguard that from going all kaput, then he was able to manage that. I think that's important to think about. Okay, how can I set myself up with safeguards to really make sure that I'm not going to be irresponsible with something? So that's just a business tip, or even a family tip, really, because this goes into like estate planning, medical directives, custody agreements, power of attorneys. because you never know when you're going to be indisposed through medical or out of the country or whatever. You never know when you're not going to be able to do that. So that's a big business tip right there, to get that stuff under control and specified while you still are healthy enough to do so.
It's a brilliant tip and a very important point to raise, because especially for creatives, because, and I'm generalizing ever so slightly, but it is quite common that when you are the creative mind behind the business, you're also likely not to be that into the financial management of the business. And one of the biggest mistakes that my dad did, and it's easy to say in hindsight, is that he was absolutely not capable of handling the financial side of the business, even when he was well, even before he fell ill. That was not his strength. It was not anything that he should have ever done, because it was not his calling. It wasn't what he was meant to be doing. He was the creative, and he needed to only focus on that. And I think part of what put a massive strain on him was trying to do everything for himself, even the things that didn't fall within his realm of expertise and inclination. And there was an element of egotism involved where he had to do it all himself. But I think, and some business owners, and I find myself guilty of that sometimes, we have that tendency of wanting to tick all the boxes ourselves and wanting to do everything ourselves. We think that's what makes us great, when actually I think the greatest leaders out there are those, like you said, who recognize their limitations and are good at hiring people who are even better than themselves at fulfilling those roles and delegating appropriately.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think that's kind of the difference. Henry Ford was great at that delegation. Like, he did not fill his mind with anything he didn't want in there. Said, I can hire somebody to have that knowledge. But I do believe it's part of it's egotistical. Part of it is just, as somebody who I'm not nearly that creative, I wouldn't say, but I don't like being curtailed. I don't like my creativity when I choose to be creative. I don't want it to be somebody putting limits on it. So it's hard when you're running a business as a creative person. You have to release some sort of control. So when you have these creative ideas, then somebody can tell you, yeah, that's a good idea, bad idea. I mean, in America, we deal with this with our president, where we have this guy who's just a little bit nuts, and he has lots of ideas, and some of them are okay, and most of them are not okay. And the best thing that he could do is have people around him who say, no, that's a bad idea. Let's not do that one, right? Or we'd be in a mess. But every once in a while, you have a really great idea, and it really helps. And so for those creative types, structuring your environment with people who are willing and able to curtail you and help you stay within bounds is actually really, really beneficial. So thanks for bringing that into this conversation, because I think that's the first time in all of my podcasts that I've been able to have this conversation, but I think it's really, really important to have. There's a few things that I really love that you said when you were telling your story, just one-liners that I want to point out, and that is prevention is the best cure for health. So many people don't believe that. So many people think, oh, it's not that bad. My habits, my daily habits, my lifestyle, it's not that bad. And it's quote unquote not that bad until there's an emergency, and it is that bad. And so prevention, having some foresight is important. And that goes just into legacy as well. If you're waiting till the end of your life to determine what your legacy is going to be, your legacy's already been decided. Sorry, buddy. Like, prevention or preparation, start thinking right now, what do I want my legacy to be? And then start living in accordance with that legacy. So that's a crossover topic or point that I really wanted to highlight because it's so important. And then the next thing I want to talk about was you're kind of, you rose in the corporate ranks, but then you had to choose into this new identity. What initially, because obviously you had your childhood experience, but if you're fully engaged in being a fashion designer and you're just loving it, everything in life is going good, what was the story? What was the instance when that thought came? What sparked the thought, I really would rather be doing health. I'd rather be doing this other thing. What sparked that thought?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think although it felt like it happened in a moment, it was probably a culmination of a process that developed over a period of time. I think I'd like to first clarify that I went into fashion at a young age, not driven by passion necessarily as much as I was driven, because I wasn't in the creative side of fashion. I was in the wholesale sales side. So it was strictly corporate. And it was really a choice driven by necessity. Because of my family history, I felt I had to go to work as soon as possible and earn my living and become independent and earn my own money. And I didn't feel I could afford the time and money to go to college. And I wanted to really build a sense of solid independence pretty early on. So I went into it driven by a sense of duty and responsibility rather than passion. But I didn't question it, and I still did pretty well. Although at some point, I don't know what I think is that happened is that I became more secure and confident in myself through the years, to the point where I felt like I was able to listen to myself a little bit more rather than just do what was expected of me. And that's when yoga came into the picture. And yoga is one of the modalities that has most profoundly transformed my life and my outlook of life, simply through putting me in touch with myself and making me become really present with who I am and what I want. And so I started practicing it regularly for many years, but I knew from a very, very early on, say second or third class, that this was something that, because I was getting so much power of self-expression from it, it was something that I wanted to pass on to others. Eventually, at some point, one year, this calling became almost unbearable, and I went from dreaming about it and thinking like, oh, one day, I used to think if I win the lottery, that's what I would do with myself and with the money. And it went from that kind of thinking, like almost like a dream sort of thinking, to actually thinking, well, do I really even need to win the lottery? Like, I can just plan for this and make it happen. So it was a slow build up, but it was all to do with having the courage and the confidence to listen to your inner self and to what you're really feeling inside.
I think that is exactly true, because you use great words, and I think they're noble words, of loyalty and like of why you went into that type of business. But I think, and this is not meant to be offensive, right? And that's not my goal, right? But I think it's fear that really probably drove you there.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because the fear of what happened to your parents forced you into, this is never going to happen to me. And it's a natural progression. Humans, we go from codependency, where we're relying on somebody else, and when we see that fail, we shift into this almost dynamite mode of independency, where we refuse to allow ourselves to suffer like we suffered with somebody else controlling our lives ever again. And so we create this ironclad independence, but there's no fulfillment in that independence, because it's purely based out of fear, protection, and isolation, rather than involvement, abundance, and connection. And so I'm getting to a point here of what I see the trend, because this is not just the trend with Serena, but I see this happen with many of my clients. That is because they built their identity on fear and isolation. They get into these relationships with significant others, and they seem to be good relationships, quote unquote. However, when somebody identifies what really fulfills them and they start to express what really fulfills them, then it comes out that relationship really never had any connection glue. It never had that interdependence, that relying on each other. It was just a convenient place and time for two people to be, rather than being in a relationship. And some people will mistake this falling in love or this relationship that they've created as a healthy relationship when it's just not. There's not the connection there that's needed. And so, yes, as she shifted her identity, it will impact your relationships. As you shift your identity as a listener, it's going to impact your relationships. There's going to be people in your life who choose out of your life and where you're going. And it's okay. It's not hard feelings towards them. Hopefully they don't have hard feelings towards you. It's okay. But it's more important that you learn to be fulfilled and follow your heart and your passion than to be somewhere. And this is contrary to a lot of people. They think divorce is never good. You should never get divorced or whatever. I think if your identity changes and they're not really in there for your identity change, then it's just going to be miserable trying to stay together anyways. It's not healthy for you, the kids, for anybody.
Absolutely. This is massive. And you're absolutely right. I mean, the life that I had built up until age 28 was a protection mechanism against the trauma of my childhood, and I went in for security, the stable job, the stable relationship. I bought a house very young. It was all the stuff that I was looking for, that sense of like rooting me down and giving me a false sense of security fundamentally, because I was looking for security outside of myself. So I was looking for the boyfriend to make me feel secure, the job to make me feel secure, the house to make me feel secure. And I ended up at a very young age, 28 years old, with everything set on paper. All the things that I dreamed of my whole life that I felt were going to fulfill me and make me feel whole and secure, realizing that actually none of it was truly what I was after. And it was pretty wild and quite controversial to take a step, literally a step into the unknown, because that's what I did. And I am grateful to the universe for giving me the strength to make that decision. But I can honest to God say, and like I said to you, my entire life crumbled apart, literally. Like you said, some relationships my choose to go. I literally, like, my entire life as I knew it, what didn't exist anymore. And I didn't know what was going to come after that. But it was the single most powerful and impactful thing I have ever done in my life, was to make that courageous step and follow my heart no matter what. And I'm not saying people should be reckless and just throw things out the window. I did, it was done in a responsible way, but it was still pretty radical. And the moment I had the courage to just stay true to myself and my calling, all the wrong relationships left my life, and relationships that were even greater than what I could have ever imagined enter my life, and a career that was even better than I could have ever imagined entered my life. But I had to create that space first, and I had to kind of allow for the unknown to be for a few months. So it's very true, and it can be quite traumatic and quite scary. But my own experience tells me that I wouldn't choose another way to live than that. It's the only way to true fulfillment.
I completely agree. So I'm gonna call out another. These are like deeper level concepts. I don't talk about these concepts very often on here. So hopefully you're getting a lot out of this, your listener, whoever's listening. But so anytime you're seeking for validation outside of yourself, and you said it perfectly, it was a defense mechanism to your outside world. The only reason that we feel as though we need a defense mechanism is because we're choosing into a victim mentality. We're choosing to believe that other things can and will happen to us. And when we're in a mindset that other people are responsible for what happens to me, then we have a need then to defend ourselves against those things that might happen. And so the very act of this defense mechanism, or any defense mechanism, is in reality a symptom of a victim mentality. And people don't always connect that. They think, no, I'm creating these defense mechanisms. I'm in creation. No, you're in victimhood, and you're running scared, and you think that if you can defend enough all of this, that you'll have time, or that you'll be safe. But there's no safety if there's no peace inside. And so true creation always comes from within. Creation can't be forced on you. Nobody else can hold you accountable to creation or make you responsible for creation. Creation comes from your inner light, your inner identity being fully expressed. That's creation. And outside of that, when you're putting in these defense mechanisms, it's living in a victim mentality and choosing into that belief. And the more you choose into that belief, the less happiness you can achieve, because the more happiness, the more percentage of your happiness you're giving away to other circumstances. So just a really deep concept that if you have more questions about it, please reach out to me or Serena. But understanding that and being able to really coach somebody through that, specifically in their health, is huge. I mean, because health is, again, probably one of the biggest areas where we have this victim mentality.
100%. And it shows up as it runs in the family. It shows up as it's in my DNA. It shows up as I've inherited it from my mom or my dad, or it shows up as this is what we do in my culture. It shows up as all these kind of expressions that we use almost to which literally are equivalent to a complete loss of power. Because the moment you put whatever the responsibility is for that ailment, either on your genes or on your family or on hereditary kind of passed on to generation habits or what have you, immediately what you're implying and unconsciously telling yourself is that it's completely outside of your control and there's nothing you can do about it. Where actually research shows now that you can even change the expression of your genes through lifestyle choices. So you can actually, if you are born with a gene that makes you predisposed to an illness, you're only a certain percentage more likely to manifest that illness. But what will really determine whether you manifest it or not is how you choose to live your life day by day from when you're born till the day you die. So the single most impactful thing that you can do, rather than taking a DNA test and go run wild, and don't get me wrong, there's a place for those, but I think sometimes people use them as a means to justify or find excuses to what they like to believe they can't change themselves. Whereas I believe that there is nothing that you can't change and improve on by the choices that you make every single day.
Yep, absolutely. And that belief is why she's on this podcast, because that belief is what inspires somebody to go create a legacy and really have meaning. So I'm curious, what would you say if you had to focus on one specific habit, mindset, or behavior that you've used most in your creation of your legacy? What would it be, and how could we adopt that into our lives?
So there's two of the most powerful things that I find myself using time and time and time again. One is gratitude. And we're talking about mindfulness practices here. I'm not going to go into the specifics of health practices, but we believe in our practice, our whole shift wellness, that you're born like the seed to a beautiful tree with all the potential that you need within you to become that beautiful tree. But then it's down to creating the right environment, and nurturing this tree, and so that it becomes strong and healthy. But so there's nothing missing. Nobody has anything missing in order to become the most fit, healthy, and confident selves. What your greatest potential is already within you. I'm not going to give you that. I'm just going to help you discover it. And so with that little preface said, gratitude tends to be one of the most powerful mindfulness and mindset practices, because most of us, especially high achievers, tend to be very focused on what's missing and what we need to achieve still and what still needs doing. And I am guilty of that myself occasionally. We fail to actually appreciate what's already here, what we've already accomplished, what, and for an instance, what we've actually already done well. So the practice of gratitude and the practice, and this is something that I do with our shifters every single phone call, of looking back at the week gone and noticing every single time that you did things as you intended and that you did things right. And we call it leveraging your successes. Those are two of the greatest practices that I find really transform the mindset, especially for those who come to us having tried millions of different health and wellness things. The world is full of them now. There's all sorts of fads, quick fixes, powders, shakers, diets, miracle products, miracle tools. So they come to us quite disheartened and a little demotivated, and they think that maybe something's wrong with them because they've tried all these many things and nothing seems to work. The moment we start focusing on being grateful and appreciative for what they already have in their lives rather than always seeking something more, and leveraging their successes, noticing the things that they get right every week so that they can become motivated to do even better. The mindset really transforms itself, and it shifts into, like you said yourself, out of that victim mentality and that kind of negative mindset into an empowered mentality, which is going to lead to even more powerful actions.
Yeah, there's something that I picked up on throughout that, kind of the idea of kind of what you're saying, or how I'd put it in my own words is, and you said this, but not giving people a solution, not giving people their identity, but helping them discover it. And I think that is so crucial, because especially in health coaching, and you see this all the time, I see it all the time with some of the other coaches that I work with, but these people, they can be decent and on a plan, and I'm definitely guilty of this. Like, I'm not even going to pretend that I'm not. I'm guilty of this, that when it comes down to exercising, if I have somebody there who's creating a plan and handing me a plan, then I can exercise. I have no problem. I can just do whatever they tell me to do. But the moment that they're not there anymore, I feel like I don't know what I'm doing, right? And that's very common with people in the health industry. And it's because I'm using myself as an example here, choose to say, well, I need this person to help me, right? Because it's not in me to naturally be good at my health or be good with my exercise or do these things. And because that's a story that I tell myself, then the result is that whenever there's somebody not telling me what to do, then I don't feel that I have the power, subconsciously don't feel like I have the power to really get out, have the motivation and do what I need to do, or even the know-how to do what I need to do. Even though that person's just reading off a piece of paper, I could just as easily read off a piece of paper, but because that person's reading off the paper and telling me that I'm more likely to do it. It's dumb psychology, right? That's just humans. I'm one of them. I'm a human. Okay. But it's interesting because that's the power of, if you're coaching somebody, if you can help them discover inside themselves the power that they already have, that's a subtle way of helping them shift out of victim mentality into the powerful identity of creation. Is, I'm not here to give you something. I can't bestow on you results. I can't bestow on you these things. It's already in you. All I can do is show you where it is potentially and help you express it more fully. And I love that that's what you're doing in practice. I'm curious if people wanted to get in touch with you. I don't know if you're coaching all over the world or if you keep it pretty localized to the UK, but how could we get in touch with you? How can we follow what you're doing? If you have books, read books, like how can we get more of Serena?
Yeah, so thank you for that. My book is out in about a month, so I'll definitely keep you posted once it's out. And by all means, if you want to share it with your followers, I would love to let them know about it. The best way to get in touch, well, we have a website, of course, www.wholeshiftwellness.com, and we have a lot of really cool tools on the website for free, some very extensive PDF reports and a really, really useful scorecard questionnaire which is revolved around allowing you to score your level of development across what we've established are the 3 pillars of well-being, and giving you bespoke tips so that you can start building in new little active steps to start getting new results. And that's completely free. It only takes 5 minutes to do. So that's possibly the most useful tool from us available on the website that anybody can use. We do offer international packages. We have a pretty good client following, thankfully, in the US, because we used to live there. So we tailor our services depending on whether we can see you in person or not. So that's definitely something that we can do. And I am very active on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. My handle is at Whole Shift Wellness. So on Instagram, for instance, I share weekly tips revolving around the 3 pillars of well-being: focus, food, and fitness. Loads of recipes, loads of nutrition information, live videos. So those are the kind of the main ways to get in touch.
Awesome. I love it. And so a lot of those links, they're going to be in here. And I know that we're recording this earlier. By the time you're listening to this, people, her book will be out. So just go look for her book. Remind me the name of it.
Make the Shift.
Make the Shift. And they'll be able to get that pretty much anywhere.
Amazon. Yeah. Yes, Amazon for sure.
Awesome. Okay, so now we're on to the second to last section here, one of my favorites, and it's called Legacy on Rapid Fire. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions, and looking for 1 word to 1 sentence answers. I may ask you to further explain one of them. But yeah, so we're going to ask 5 questions, 1 word to 1 sentence answers. You ready to go?
Let's do it.
Awesome. Okay, what do you believe is holding you back from reaching the next level of your legacy today?
Fear.
Fear of what?
Fear of success. I think we tend to believe that we're fearful of failure more than we're fearful of being successful. But actually, being wildly successful can be quite intimidating and scaring. And sometimes we are afraid of our bigness more than we are afraid of failing. And so that's the one fear that I constantly have to challenge myself to overcome, is the fear of being greater than I even think.
Awesome. I love that answer. So what do you think the hardest thing you've ever accomplished has been?
I would say definitely moving to London at age 21 from Italy, not speaking the language. I had literally enough money to sustain myself for a month, and I knew I couldn't rely on my family. I was very young, yet very driven, and I made it. But if I look back, it was a very challenging experience and time in my life.
Awesome. And what do you think the greatest success to this point in your life has been?
Fulfilling my dreams. Definitely. If I think about some of the things that I've accomplished, they were definitely dreams back in the days, and now they are my reality.
I love that. Love that answer. What is one secret that you believe contributes most to your success?
Is taking care of myself first and foremost before I take care of anybody else. Essentially being selfish in a very selfless way. So being selfish for the purpose of always having an abundance, an overflow to give to those around me.
I completely agree with that. That is one of the best things that I do daily. And you don't really recognize how valuable it is until you come in contact with somebody who hasn't learned to take care of themselves. Then you're like, wow, your life is really not going great. You should take some time for yourself. I can't. No, you have to. Like, you can't afford not to take time for yourself. So I love that.
It's selfish. I believe it is selfish to neglect yourself, and you justify it with righteousness and feeling like you're doing a great job, but actually you're failing everybody. If you fail yourself, whether you realize it or not, you are failing everybody around you.
Yep, completely agree. So what are 2 or 3 books that you would recommend to the Fuel Your Legacy audience?
Wow. So The Pleasure Trap by Dr. Lyle is obviously they're going to be health and wellness books for the most part, but that's a very powerful book. Proteinaholic by Dr. Garth Davis, a game-changing book revolving around nutrition, and Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza. one of the greatest books I've ever read, possibly.
I agree. I love Joe Dispenza.
I love him so much.
he's like my people. I love listening to him. Okay, so this is my favorite question of all time, which is why it's at the end of my podcast, because I want to leave everybody who listens to this on an awesome note, fired up, and also thinking about the answer to this question for themselves. And it's been interesting to hear people who have been listening to my podcast over time and how they've come and how they've started thinking about this and what they've created because I asked this question on my podcast. So I don't think it's ever going away. I love the question. The kind of scene or situation is we're going to pretend that you're dead. Okay, Serena?
Yes.
You died, but you have the opportunity to come back and view your great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren 6 generations from now, sitting around a table, discussing your life, what it meant, what you accomplished. What do you want your legacy to be 6 generations from now?
Wow, that's powerful. You know, one of my greatest passions at the moment is to empower individuals to make the shift towards plant-based eating to whatever extent they feel comfortable doing. Because I genuinely believe that it is a shift that is greater than just a nutritional trend. It is a shift in human consciousness. And it is one of those game-changing transformation that humanity is going through that is going to propel us into a way higher level of evolution and the next phase of the expansion of humanity. So if 6 generations from now, I was to be known as somebody who contributed to that shift towards people shifting to plant-based eating, that would make me really happy and really proud.
Awesome. I love that. Love it so much. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know we're like 8 hours difference right now, which means it's later. Well, I guess it's like what? 10 o'clock there? 10?
8 p.m.
Okay, 8 p.m. in London right now. It's about 2 p.m. here. So thank you so much for staying up late and helping share your knowledge, bringing your expertise to the Fuel Your Legacy audience. I love that you're a part of this.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Brilliant conversation. Thank you so much.
Yep, no problem. Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me. And if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.